how painful it is to build a company if you've never done it before. Like this, LinkedIn solved finding people, and LinkedIn hasn't solved finding the right person.
Yeah.
And so that's still the holy grail.
Welcome to Founder Led, where we sit down with some of the sharpest minds shaping the recruitment industry. This episode is brought to you by Frontier Studios, a full funnel content agency that helps business owners like you grow your visibility, authority, and ultimately demand for your products and services from LinkedIn. So if you're ready to join over 40 businesses that are turning executive thought leadership content into real revenue while spending less than 1 hour per week of your time, comment thought leadership below and someone from our sales team will reach out. Now, let's get to today's episode. Our guest today truly needs no introduction. Steve Cadigan is LinkedIn's first Chief Human Resources Officer, a globally recognized thought leader on the future of work, and one of the most influential voices in modern talent and culture strategy. Steve's mission is both timely and essential to help leaders and organizations build future-ready teams by reimagining how we attract talent, design culture, and lead in a world that's being reshaped by technology, AI, and constant change. Steve has advised organizations from Google, Salesforce, the BBC, Andreessen Horowitz, and McKinsey, and is constantly recognized among the world's top global thought leaders on people and talent strategy. Steve, welcome to the show. Well, Steve, would love to open it up with you sharing a bit about your journey and your career arc. So what initially attracted you to the world of HR and people, and what kept you in the space?
Oh gosh, I'm sure like a lot of people's career choices, I didn't really wind up in some place because of a plan or some design. I sort of fell into it, and I was sitting in my first job in the fashion industry at a company called Esprit in San Francisco, working in finance, and I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, so I was applying to business schools. And the company came to me and said, hey, rather than you going and paying to learn somewhere else, would you be interested in getting paid to learn something new? We'll teach you how to do this function we have called recruiting. And I was like, what's recruiting? And they said, oh, you assess people, interview people, try to attract people to our company, and you try to help us build winning teams. And I was like, you pay people for that? Like that is something that, that's actually a profession. And what initially attracted me to that field was just my love of sports, because everything about sports and coaching and building teams is what human resources is about. And so for me, it was like hand in glove right away. Like I just love, as a sports fan, I love watching how people handle situations, how they handle working for a difficult coach, or how they handle pressure, playing from behind, winning, how they handle welcoming a new player that just got traded or joined the team, how they handle young players who don't have experience. Are they going to mentor them? Are they going to stress them out? Or, how's it going to go? And that's something that's always just been of interest to me over my, most of my life prior to that. And when I found out there's a profession that actually really nurtures that in a professional setting, that was really what the big draw was. Over the course of my career, I've worked in 6 different industries, lived and worked in Singapore for 2 years, Canada for 4 years in Vancouver, and then the US. But I've worked on M&A integrations in a human resource capacity in many, many countries. And the last role I had was the first chief HR officer at LinkedIn, taking it from 400 to 4,000 people in under 4 years, which was just incredibly insane. We're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about that today. I left there after the IPO and just started thinking about what I wanted to do next. I was really essentially on my knees. That was just a intense, highly stressful experience, which I wasn't prepared for, but I was really excited to be a part of, and took a deep breath. And then over the course of the last 12 years since I left LinkedIn, just been building my own practice, helping, find what the market's interested in terms of what I have to offer and what I'm interested in doing. And it's really centered around, as you said in the introduction, just helping people build compelling talent strategies for a really unpredictable, world of more change and more uncertainty than any point in history. And that's just been my interest, and what's happening in the economy happened to align like a perfect storm. And so I feel really privileged to include in my clients today, like the city of Lisbon, Portugal, or the cement industry in Colombia, or the mining industry in Brazil, or the healthcare industry in the United States, among the clients that look to me for, hey, we've got some real talent issues, and I just love getting in there. And, I'm at the point in my career arc where I sort of ask myself, my wife and I talk about this all the time, like, well, how much longer are we going to do this? I'm like, I don't know, but I just love what I do. And people still think I've got something valuable to offer. So as long as that continues to be the case, that I really love what I do, and the clients are really grooving on, my services, then let's keep going. So yeah.
I can feel the energy and the excitement as you talk about all of that. So yeah, it's definitely palpable. So let's go back to your time at LinkedIn. LinkedIn was still very much an emerging company when you joined. Can you take us back, share maybe a memorable moment from those early days, maybe a surprising lesson or anything that you took away while helping them scale their culture from, a few hundred people to thousands of people?
Yeah, I guess there's several. There's ones that I think were surprising to me, and there's ones that are going to be surprising to the audience. So I'll give you a little sprinkling of both. But what was surprising to me was how painful it is to build a company if you've never done it before. And I'd worked in big organizations, much bigger than LinkedIn was when I joined. I mean, the smallest company I worked for was maybe 1,200 people, and when I was in Canada. And when I joined LinkedIn, it was just around 400, 5 years old. I mean, not even going through puberty yet. I mean, just really early, just been born. And, as a newcomer to a startup, as a newcomer to a small privately held company, I didn't know what I didn't know. And it turns out building the function of human resources, how are we going to reward, how's the org design going to work, how many levels and titles, and what's our compensation philosophy, what's our communication philosophy, what's our culture, building that is far different than tuning it as I'd done most of my career, right? And that was probably the greatest lesson for me was in whatever profession you sit in your career journey, if you get thrown into a place where you've got to rebuild it from the studs, from nothing, that is incredibly valuable. Asking questions like, why do we do performance reviews? What's the point? Do we want to do it? And if we do it, how often? How frequent? Do we want to rate people? Do we not want to rate people? If we rate them, what scale should we use? If we rate them, should we tell them? What should we rate? What's important to us? Is it potential? Is it performance? And those kinds of conversations. And no one on our leadership team had ever built a company before. I mean, we had, and they still have some phenomenally talented people, but at that time, none of us had ever built a company from nothing. Our CEO was a first-time CEO, never been a CEO before. Our CFO had never taken a company public. I mean, phenomenally talented people. And in a way, that was a competitive advantage to us, that we didn't have a pre-shaped notion of how this should go. Now, it did cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of discussion and debate and a lot of dissension at times, but that was super healthy, and because no one was there. We had some people from Google, but they weren't there when Google was nothing, So we're okay, you were there when things were good, but you weren't there when things were uncertain and unknown. And so that was a surprise to me how hard that was going to be. Okay. The second thing was, I think from the outside is we hit a point where we started to feel okay, I think we're going to make this. I think this is going to work. We're going to be a public company. We're going to have an exit. This is actually going to happen. And there's this point of imposter syndrome that hit us, which I think people on the outside must probably project oh, how hard was that? It was super easy. You guys crushed it. No, we didn't, man. It was really tough going. We never hit a spike in growth like Facebook did with, new users joining or anything like that. It was really hard. Our curve of growth was very steady, very slow, very, very successful. But it took us a while for us to sort of say, we deserve to be here. Let's act like we've been here before, and let's, expect that we're going to win. And that's a very big mindset shift. And in the United States, as we're recording this right now, we're heading into the U.S. football playoffs. And there's some teams that have never been there before, and there's some teams that have been there before. And what you notice if you look historically at the playoffs, the teams that have been here before, no, this game's different. Okay? When you become public and when you become you've got quarterly earnings and things this is a different game. Are you ready for that? And we weren't sure that we were ready for the big time or deserving of the big time. And so that was a big surprise to me. What? We should be, puffing our chest out. And a lot of us were no, do we deserve to be here? And that took a little while for us to get our mojo, if you will. So those are sort of couple different perspectives, I guess I would say to answer your question.
Okay. And if you think of, was there a moment where the product adoption or the growth hit a certain inflection point where it's okay, it's now, or Was it over a series of months and even years where it was that steady growth, maybe maturity of the leadership, advisors being like, hey, we've got something really here? Yeah, maybe take us back to that moment and
Sure.
speak to what that looked like.
I don't think anyone that was with me on that leadership team, there's about 12 of us on the executive table with Reed and Jeff Weiner, the CEO, and the rest of the team. I don't think there was ever a moment that we could say, yeah, that decision, that was a real big one. Keep in mind, in our universe, okay, as LinkedIn's growing, you've got Facebook running around breaking glass, breaking rules, getting in trouble with privacy councils all over. And I think what we did was we kind of went to the privacy commissioners before we launched in a new country. Like if we're going to go launch in German, we would go to the privacy commissioner in Germany and say, hey, this is how our site works. This is the information that's going to be shared. Where do you have issues or concerns? Let's talk about it. Whereas our peers would go in and just start, doing what they do until they were told, don't do that. And that, I think, bought us a lot of credibility. We also learned, it was just a great, I'm a history major. And it was every week when we would look at the stats and the data on international traction, like where we're getting the real traction, it was a fascinating economic lesson. So the one country, when I asked people like, hey, I want you to guess of all the countries that we released, Italian, German, French, Spanish, and Portuguese, which one do you think exploded the most? And most people, if they know the economy of the time, like the late 90s, 2009, 10, 11, 12, where all this was, we're starting to go through this homologation of international language laws. Brazil was far and away exploded. Why? Because the middle class was really growing and their economy was really growing at the time. And then we learned things like, hey, Germans generally in Germany do not move. If you're in Dusseldorf, you are not going to Hamburg. You are there. And so what's the point of having a recruiting solution when it's much more a networked, deeply networked? Or conversely, in Japan, where it's the corporate structures are massive corporations where one company's selling cars, they're into houses, they're into real estate, they're into machinery, they're into batteries and TVs. One whole company does you have people having career journeys within one organization for a long time, and how they use their names is very different. And so it was just a fascinating learning. But I think to answer your question, I think it was a collection of building trust with the authorities that we were going to be the adults in how we approached our business, and maybe we missed some opportunities. I mean, the whole time I was there, the biggest nut we were trying to crack was how do we think about China, and that was the chairman Reid Hoffman's big project. I mean, here you've got billions of people, okay, and a lot of professionals, but you also have a government that has a very different level of thinking around data privacy, And so do we want that government having all the data of all the non-Chinese citizens? How can we make this work? And as you may know, China, like a lot of companies or countries, requires that the majority ownership of the business is a local national, not an international company. Right?
Yeah.
So we had to find a partner who's going to own 51% of LinkedIn China, for example. And that takes a while, right? Who are we getting? So that was probably, we ultimately decided that we were going to pursue that, but that dominated a lot of thinking for a long time, and we didn't go quickly on that one. We took our time.
Okay. Wow. Incredible. I mean, just stories on such an iconic company. I'm just looking back. That's really fascinating. Are there any
If I
other...
could, Rohan, I want to answer
please.
on a more sort of humorous yet meaningful level. There were two moments when our membership exploded, okay? So I don't think this was just changed the trajectory of the company, but there are two moments that really made a difference in terms of membership. One was President Obama came to our company to speak. And the day after he spoke on our campus with our CEO, our membership went from a new member a second to 2 members a second. Okay.
Wow.
So that wasn't new product. That was just affirmation that something valuable is happening here. The President of the United States is there. No, it happened to be an election year, and every president wants to show that I'm creating new jobs, so he's going to be friends with us, right? That was pretty cool. And then the next time the membership doubled was the day that we went public. Yeah. And that's both of those things are really interesting lessons in validation and perception than a product feature. You see what I'm saying? People perceived, this is no longer some, risky fly-by-night startup. They're public now. And we're just like, whoa, they think we know what we're doing. We're still, the same company that we were the day before we went public. But now there's this bestowing of belief, right?
Yeah.
That drove a lot more membership. It was super interesting. Yeah.
Wow. I know you're no longer at LinkedIn. You haven't been there for years now, but I'd be curious if you have a perspective on how the platform has evolved from, back when you were there to now more recent usage. Traditionally, LinkedIn has been perhaps an online resume for many people and used mostly by recruiters. Now we're seeing it really as a true publishing platform. People are seeing the opportunity. There's so much attention on the platform, but so few creators. I think the stat was somewhere between 1% to 2% of people on the platform are creating content on a weekly basis. So there's really that opportunity to capture some of that attention. In your observation, have you noticed any interesting changes or trends as the platform has evolved more recently?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I feel like it has become a bigger thoroughfare of idea exchange. I think you articulated that really well, than a recruiting, right? Like in the early days, I would go to executives and say, "Hey, are you on LinkedIn?" Like, "No, I'm not looking for a job." I'm like, "Well, I don't look for a job, but I'm on LinkedIn 10 times a day because so-and-so, Rohan published something really interesting, or I read an article from so-and-so, and then I get to see the people that I follow, what they're reading, and that's curated news for me, right? Crowdsourced from my network." So I think, they've got, billion plus people on the platform now. And the tricky thing is, I mean, the more people you get onto this platform, the more the potential for pollution rises. Okay.
Right.
Like, I'm sure you get the same kind of reach outs I get, like, hey, Steve, we're implementing this new compensation plan. We really want to pitch to you. I'm like, bro, did you look at my profile? Like, I'm not in a company.
Right.
Like, I'm a board member and an advisor. I've got my golden retriever and my wife helps me out with some projects, but it's like, I'm not a company with a payroll plan. You know what I'm saying? Like, do your homework. Don't bother me. And that is really hard for LinkedIn to police. Right?
Yes.
Like people are paying for this. So that's why I have, and I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, please adopt this practice. If someone connects with you, you don't know them and you accept it, and the first thing they do is start to sell you something, immediately disconnect from them and immediately unfollow them. Okay? Because that is that's an abuse of the platform. Like, that's not what it's for. And so I think another thing not about LinkedIn that's surprising to me is I thought by now there would be a competitor somewhere.
Yeah, me too.
And there isn't. And in fact, they're strengthening their membership stickiness. They're strengthening the people who sign up for the pro account. Like, that's hats off to them. And the other thing that surprised me was I didn't, prior to sort of Satya taking over the helm at Microsoft, they had a horrible track record of retention of acquisitions. And I was like, oh boy, one of the ironies is, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school or outing someone here. In the early days, we were so anti-big company. Like, we will never be a big company. Like, we need to be lean and mean. And we will never be like a Microsoft. And then oh, knock, knock, who's there, Microsoft? And $16 billion. Oh yeah, or $26 billion. Yeah, we'll take it. All good. So, and at some point, everyone, and it's a great problem to face, for you to realize your destiny, you need to be partners with someone really big. And the relationship really made sense at that point, where it's like every professional's using their desktop tools every day, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. This just is a natural partnership. And the fact that LinkedIn's been able to keep its unique identity, I mean, that's pretty amazing. You talk to the people there, like, it's definitely, they're sharing a lot of resources clearly, and they're on the Microsoft comp plan and the stock plan, but that's really impressed me, how both LinkedIn and Microsoft have managed that combination in a way that's benefited both, I think, really well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just going back to, the earlier days, was there ever perceived threat from when Facebook launched their, Facebook at Work product, that it would be a real threat to LinkedIn?
I'm sure there's some gray hairs here from the war rooms, the weekend, oh my gosh. And it wasn't Facebook launching something. Facebook would buy a recruiting platform. I mean, and why wouldn't you, right? Yes. So the answer was definitely. There was two moments in particular where they bought, I can't remember the name of the firms, they bought them, and it's like, okay, all hands on deck. Like, what's the threat? And then we did our research. It's like 3% of Facebook people have any professional data of themselves in their profiles. Like, is this like really a threat or not? And we deem it to be. Well, let's just keep a pulse on it. And our underlying belief is that people want a separate professional identity from, hey, look at me doing a keg stand over here at my frat party, And Zuckerberg was always like, hey, that's inauthentic to have two selves. Like, you just got to be one person. I'm like, yeah, it sounds good, but I'm not putting that keg stand stuff over here on my LinkedIn profile, right?
Yeah.
And you do see it in the LinkedIn comments, like, please stop talking about the personal stuff. People, they get a little bit annoyed. I post more personal stuff than I used to, and I think
Yeah.
work is about family and friendships and things like that. I think there's deeper meaning there, but that's just an interesting, we also, here's another thing, that a lot of people don't appreciate. In the early days of LinkedIn, how do you think most people got to LinkedIn? From doing what?
Doing a search for
on
a
what
particular
platform?
company?
Doing
On
a search
Google.
through what? That's right. So guess who knows your traffic? Google does,
Right.
because
Yep.
they're sending everybody there. You don't think at some point they went, there's a hell of a lot of people going there, so that we could steer to asking about a job, but let's go steer them to the Google recruiting company, right?
Right.
That was the bigger fear, because they're, and this is a lot of people don't know that, and this is, Sam Altman's very aware of it now, like we're steering a ton of traffic, and we're also, controlling access to various, sites that OpenAI doesn't have access to on the web still. And that now you're seeing Gemini sort of like really ramp up. That's been the rhetoric, right? December and going into this month, like, whoa, they have a real advantage here, and they're taking this seriously. And there's a lot of really, really smart people. And we hear stories about, the OpenAI war room and stuff like that. So it's very real. It's very real. And if you look at the anatomy of traffic, that's where the power is. And Google holds, even to this day, enormous amounts of the signals of who's going where. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very true. Like capital follows attention, and it's no surprise that some of the most valuable companies are in the business of capturing, holding attention while providing value to their audience and incentivizing the creators as well. So maybe shifting gears a bit and rethinking the AI narrative as we weave it into like LinkedIn as a content platform. I think Gary Tan and who's the president of Y Combinator, he talked about this idea of if knowledge, information, and now intelligence is on tap, you have world-class intelligence on tap for $20 a month, what is truly scarce, and what are the stories and narratives that are actually going to be valued in the future economy. And so when you think of how can companies start to create some differentiation, start to think about promoting their culture, how do you advise founders and also company builders to do that and create their narrative in an authentic, differentiated, yet relevant and valuable way?
Yeah, great question. And I think it sits at the core of what's on the mind of a lot of people that I'm talking to right now. If you really believe, like I do, that some of the greatest, let me backtrack for a second. So I write a lot and I podcast a lot, and so I'm doing a lot of research. What I'm finding, whether I'm using Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Anthropic, whatever I'm using, I'm not getting new ideas. I'm searching ideas that other people have done. You see what I'm saying? So I think novelty and creativity and innovation is still very, very much something that is going to be, up for grabs. And so how do I, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a CEO, as someone building an organization right now, how do I optimize for that, right? Like, so, because I can go and say, well, I love going to LLMs and say, here's a thesis, give me 6 people that have give me a good quote to back my idea. That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's really great. I don't have to go interview Brene Brown. I can go find the quote. Here it is, boom, right in my book, right? And so that's super, super helpful. But what isn't helpful is like, hey, what's a different way for me to think about employee retention in a world where people are leaving companies faster than ever before? Like, how can I think about that differently? It's just like, it's just surfacing a bunch of stuff that other people have done. Like I may stumble across a novel idea, but the most novel ideas aren't always being published or talked about or presented. And we still don't have LLMs really mining podcast content. Right? Not all the podcasts have been transcribed. And there is a ton of brilliant ideas sitting there, right? So how do I curate that and come up with new ideas? Well, that's got to be through people, right? And it's got to be through an environment where I'm experimenting a lot. And that's really where I think business is really going to struggle, is because most of the business leaders, especially people over 50, have been taught command and control. I own, I govern, I lead, top down. And that is going to be a failed strategy in a world where You just look at the automobile industry. The company that's crushing it right now is the company that hasn't been around 30 years. It's got a part-time CEO. It's got 6 jobs, and they're worth 1.7 trillion, right, or 1.3 trillion dollars more than Ford, Toyota, Honda, GMC, BMW, Mercedes combined. They're not even combined. They're not even half as valuable. Because why? Because the investors believe that Tesla can out-innovate people who don't know how to get out of their own way. You know what I'm saying? Like in all respect to those companies, because some of them are doing, that is fabulously more complex to turn around a 100-year company than it is to build something from nothing today. And that's the challenge, right? And that gets to me, when I think about leaders, is like, hey, it used to be the companies that one of the ones that have people stay there a long time and we build up trust and relationship equity and so forth. No. Today, it's the ones that have new people with new ideas from different industries that can bring new decision-making capability. That makes you a stronger organization. And that's so different from how we've seen successful companies in the past. I did research that I just published recently, 5 of the most highest growth companies in the last 5 years. NVIDIA, number 1. Number 2, Google. Then there's Microsoft, there's Broadcom, and then who am I missing? NVIDIA, Microsoft, Broadcom, Google. And so what all those companies have, I forget the 5th one is, what all those companies have, what all those companies have is a median tenure of around 4 years, okay? 4 years. Now, you could, a cynic could say, well, they're lucky. I'm like, lucky? I don't think so, man. And so they are in the technology space, but look at the value NVIDIA's created, and they're sitting around, their tenure right now is around 3.8 years, okay? Wow. So that's like, wow. That's an incredibly complex set of solutions that they're delivering, right? And to see if they can hang on to it, right? That's why it's super interesting to me to see Amazon struggling. We need to completely change everything. Like, bro, and going through it in a very draconian way. Like, you've got all these great business creative practices, and when it comes to leading people, you're still sitting from the 1970s Tony Soprano school of HR. Like, what are you doing? Like, and so I think that, it's going to be innovation through how do we unlock these great ideas from people, not how do we program the AI to give I don't think, to me, that's not going to be the nirvana. It's going to be, how do we use the AI to find us incredible people who are really going to hum here? Like this, LinkedIn solved finding people, and LinkedIn hasn't solved finding the right person. And so that's still the holy grail. Like, how do I find the right person for them and for me in this next 3-5 year window of their life? And that is I think the ultimate thing that we should hopefully be going after is this skill anatomy through using sort of sophisticated AI.
Wow. And just for comparison, you said these top performing high growth companies have an average tenure of about 4 years. What is the average tenure of the average company of a similar?
Right. Well, I've mostly got North America data. So right now it's sitting at sort of 3.9 years. Okay. And that's for all ages. Now, if you go through over 50, it's 9. Okay. And if you go under 30, it's 2.4.
So there's not that much of a difference between an NVIDIA and your average S&P 500 company. Okay.
Nope. But if you look at the hyper growth that they've had, though, that's you can't. And I use this example. It's not to say that you shouldn't keep people a long time. Like, I want to keep my best people a long time. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying it's not a necessary element for you to thrive today as much as in the past.
Yeah. So you talk about this idea of today's economy, it's a lot about layoffs, cost cutting. That's the reality that a lot of us are living in with now. How do we do more with less? How do we use AI to be as efficient as possible? We also talk about this idea of, some of these most successful companies have built a culture of experimentation. They have enabled their teams and their people to really thrive at the organizations. So what lessons, because you have all this pattern recognition, what lessons can you give to a company who might have, their products and services, they're not a fast-growing technology, deep tech company. What people-based, culture-based lessons can you share with them that have been the highest leverage that they can think about adopting?
Yeah, thanks. And I know we talked about this when you and I first connected, and you like, I think I've triggered you a little bit. Like, yes, this is a very important domain for me. Traditionally, with technology, we've been given a very simple, framework. Why do we want to use technology? Because we want to do more, we want to go faster, and we want to save money, right? Do more, go faster, cut expenses, right? Who doesn't want to do that? Of course. Unfortunately, that paradigm of implementing technology really misses, I think, the ultimate capability of AI, which is growing your top line. Okay, not do more, it's create more, right? And most people's knee-jerk reaction, instinctual, is to do what we've done with other technologies. Like, hey, let's use it so my people can do more, they can go faster, and we can cut costs. Okay, 90% of the costs in most organizations are people. Okay, so if that's the path you want to take, do you want to go work for a firm that's looking to, I'm going to make you run faster, I'm going to make you do more, and I'm going to cut the expenses that you're costing me? Or would you rather work for a company that says, you know what, we're going to give you AI and we're going to turbocharge your career. We're going to unlock the greatest potential that you have. We're going to help you open your eyes to see that you can do more than you ever thought possible. And you're going to create new markets for us. And you're going to open up new opportunities. And you're going to grow the top line. And that's not what I'm seeing enough of right now. And we need more examples of that. We have plenty of examples of cut. Great. Like the biggest theme that's really irritating me right now is the rapid deterioration of entry-level jobs. Because, the easiest thing, if you're going to cut headcount, well, who's the easiest target? The people you haven't hired yet. The new grads. Like, let's just cut them that we don't hurt any of our people. Yeah, that's fine today. What about in 5 years when we have no leaders? We have no pipeline. What are you going to do? Go steal from someone else? Well, guess what? They're going to be stealing from you too. Who's building the next generation of leaders? Like, unless we want to fast forward to, everyone has, some sort of life, fund that they're living off of, and Elon Musk is right that we won't have jobs. Like, I just don't see that happening in our lifetime right now. And so that, to me, you got two big choices with AI. Cut and head to the bottom line, or let's figure out how we grow the top line. And growing the top line is harder. It's more complex, but the rewards are so much greater, right? That's why when I'm working with companies, I'm working with this one firm called Slate Advisors. I've been working with them for 12 years, and they do executive coaching. They've been playing around and experimenting with bot coaches, okay? And I know that as soon as you hear that, it's like the last person I want to share my problems with is a bot. Not true. It turns out most people would rather, feel less vulnerable and less likely to be judged by sharing their inner fears and concerns and anxieties with a AI coach than a real one. So then the skeptics go, this is going to eliminate all coaches. No, it's not. It's going to make the coaches, the human ones, more effective because they're getting at the source of the real concerns faster. Okay? So that is a beautiful marriage of AI. McKinsey, at the end of 25, published a report, the State of the Union on AI. What did they find? 88% of the companies are using it. 33% think they're going to eliminate jobs. 13% think they're going to increase. And 16% are seeing a material difference in their profits, okay, with the use of AI. And so they said, well, let's look at those 16%. What are they doing to get this material upside of profits? They're using AI to augment people's performance, not eliminate it. So not to say McKinsey's always right, but no one can doubt that they're trying to put a lot of rigor into their work. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. The data speaks for itself there, which is also just it's a more rationally optimistic way of looking at the world, which is more exciting, right? Why not create the world that feels more exciting and empowering to humans and humanity? So
that's right. And now you're getting at the real bottom line of what's the whole point of technology? If it's not to create a more beautiful life, what the hell are we using it for? And we're losing our way, by the way. I really feel like I don't want to take this down to, Dougie Downer conversation here, but we have lost our relationship with technology, and email is exhibit A. We have lost our relationship. We have weaponized email to make everyone else more behind and giving them impossible amounts of information to consume. And let's use the AI to win it back, Let's use AI to sort of win back our relationship with technology and create more beautiful reality, not just at work, right?
Yeah. That'd be great. So, Steve, as we wrap it up here, we'd love to just ask you a few rapid fire questions, and then also how folks can learn more about you and your work if they wanted to get in touch with you. So just a few rapid fire questions. What's one thing every CEO should be learning right now?
I think every CEO should be familiarizing their own belief system around AI. Like, what is your philosophy with AI? Very, very important. The creators of AI products are not going to give you a playbook. They're not. They have birthed these foster children and they're yours to raise. So I think you need to recognize, you're going to have to build your company's playbook around this very quickly.
Great. So red flag and green flag question. So start with the green flag. What is the best culture signal inside of a company?
People wanting their friends to work there.
What is a culture red flag inside a company?
Nobody's saying that there's an elephant in the room, something's broken. Fear
last
of saying
question.
the truth. Yeah, fear of saying the truth.
I like that. If you were to describe the future of work in one sentence, what would that be?
Oh, bro, you got to give me a heads up on this one. This is a tough one. The future work.
Take your time. Take your time.
Okay. The future of work will be a domain where the lines between employer and employee are more blurred, and most work is done with more independence. Okay. So I also believe, sentence number 2, most organizations are going to be shrinking. This is going to be more of an ecosystem of work than companies owning every, part of the life cycle of their product.
In 10 years, will the average tenure of a company be the same, be up or down? Average tenure of an employee at a company.
Compared to today, I think we are pretty close to hitting a flat line of where it will sort of stay at a little bit less than where it is today, but it's going to stay there. Retention is not going to rise in the next 10 years.
Great. Steve, we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience. And this has been great. If someone wanted to get in touch, what's the best way for them to reach out? We'll definitely include your LinkedIn profile and your email, but how else can people get in touch?
Yeah, listen, a lot of the work that I do today is helping leaders and leadership teams, in some cases boards and industry associations, really help build better, compelling talent strategies. The best way to get through to me is through my website, stevecadigan.com, through LinkedIn, very easy to find me. If you're interested if some of this content's interesting, I've got a podcast called The Workquake Weekly, which is just a weekly 5 to 10 minute segment on some of the ideas that I'm seeing that have got my attention. And once in a while, a few suggestions on how to, think differently about some of those. Or you can email me directly at steve@cadiganventures.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.